Freedom to Know Wellness, a disability advocacy platform to hold space and give a voice to those with complex medical and chronic pain conditions, female reproductive challenges and miscarriages, and address other disability-related topics, including how these experiences affect one's mental health. Welcome to Freedom to Know Wellness, where voices are heard. Please advise, the information provided in this episode is from the opinions of the interviewee and interviewer. For further medical advice, please contact your practitioner. Now, let's start the interview. Please remember to subscribe to the Freedom to Know Wellness channel at FTKWellness to catch all of our content, and click the bell for notifications on new posts. If you enjoy our content, consider contributing financially to aid with the Freedom to Know Wellness production by clicking the @FTKWellness PayPal link on our channel's page or found in the description box below.
A traumatic birth or birth trauma is a topic not often discussed and overlooked by the mainstream and medical community. A traumatic birth is not a disappointing birth, although some may pass off the experience as such. It is trauma caused during delivery when the baby and/or the mother's life are threatened, requiring an emergency invasive delivery. The act of giving birth can be a shocking experience for the body for both mother and baby. But when something goes wrong during delivery, requiring assisted aggressive actions like an emergency C-section, a vacuum delivery, or a forceps delivery, which is a procedure now rarely used only in cases of emergency, these types of birth don't allow the mother's body to acclimatize to the delivery. It can drastically and traumatically affect the central nervous system, causing the mother's body and mind to go into shock, and other symptoms like the initial production of the mother's milk. As the organization Birth Trauma Ontario perfectly describes, a traumatic birth or birth trauma is a full-out traumatic experience that includes elements of violation, loss of control, fear of life, and helplessness. And the birth partners are not excluded from the effects of a traumatic birth. In today's episode, we will learn about our guest Allison Wylie's traumatic birth, but also how she and her partner struggled with infertility and the journey, and I do stress the word journey, trying to conceive via IVF. Birth trauma is a sensitive topic, so viewers' discretion is advised.
Welcome to Freedom to Know Wellness. I am your host, Michelle Samuels. I would like to welcome our special guest today, Allison Wylie, to the Freedom to Know Wellness platform. Welcome, Allison. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Great. So tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
My name is Allison, and I'm almost 38 years old, which means I've been saying I'm almost 40, which is pretty scary. And I live in Calgary, Alberta, and I have 2 children that I conceived through IVF. And I'm married to an engineer husband, and he's busy at work, and hopefully the kids stay quiet throughout this conversation.
Wow. And what kind of career do you have?
I have a crazy career. That's a whole podcast unto itself, I'm pretty sure. So I'm technically a registered dental hygienist. I did that at university in Edmonton, so in Canada. And I did that and specialized in perio, went to school for that. And then I did a master's in business. And then I did hygiene for a while. And then I started my own practice, which I know you can do in Ontario as well.
Good.
But it's a little bit more uncommon, and it was 14 years ago when I did that. So it's been a while. I thankfully was able to actually sell that as I got hired by a Mississauga-based company, GlaxoSmithKline, to be the Sensodyne rep. So I was the Sensodyne toothpaste rep for a few years. And then from there, I went to teach dental assisting because there's no dental hygiene school in Calgary. There's only dental hygiene school in Edmonton. So we're smaller out west than you guys are out east. So there's only one dental-ish kind of school basically per province in the west. So ours in Alberta is in Edmonton, which is 3 hours away. So I didn't want to commute to teach there. So I've been teaching dental assisting at SAIT, which is really fun. But when I had kids, the hours were very long, and I was lucky to be appointed as a government appointed marriage officiant. So a little bit different again throughout the country. Things are so different. But in Alberta, it's a government appointment position. It's not a justice of the peace. And so I don't have any legal power except for to marry people. which
Okay.
is very cool. And so I mostly do weddings now. It's a great business. I spend a lot of time in the summer in the mountains marrying people, and I have lots of weddings at my house. And my eldest son, who is 4, thinks that's very cool. And he's like, "Are you marrying people this weekend?" So yeah, lots of really different things I do in my life. I do a little bit of hygiene. I do a little bit of weddings. I do a little bit of fitness, and I do a little bit of business stuff on the side. So lots of different things going on.
So from one fitness enthusiast to another, what type of fitness do you do or instructing?
I am used to be a triathlete, but I broke my knee, which could be another conversation around health and wellness.
Yep.
I was out training at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I tripped on nothing at August 31st, and I broke my fibia and tore every ligament in my knee. So my ELL, meniscus, intralateral, all this stuff. So they harvested hamstrings from my right leg and put them into my lateral left leg to strengthen my knock-kneedness and to give that a little more strength. So my knees haven't been the same since I was 30 when this happened, unfortunately.
Yeah,
So I
sorry
don't
about
do
that.
triathlons anymore. Well, I pretended to be a runner, and I'm not really a runner. And the orthopedic surgeon was like, "You should have never been a runner. You're trying way too hard. This is not your sport."
And you had knock knees, so
And
that would have added more pressure on the knees.
yeah, I
Oh
mean, I
God.
never thought it was horrible. I just thought that's the way I was built. But clearly the way I
Yes.
was built was meant to not be a runner.
Right,
So
exactly.
yeah, so I haven't done triathlons now since I was 30, and I'm not supposed to run anymore. So I'm mainly a swimmer, and I teach spin
Good.
classes, which are cycle classes, and some weight classes, and also prenatal, postnatal classes.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
with that, yeah.
So, okay. All right. So do you have a website for that, for the prenatal and postnatal?
No, it's
Okay.
again something that's in the back of my head that would be really fun to start, but
Okay.
too many ideas out there. I just teach at local facilities within the city.
Okay. Well, that's wonderful.
Thank you for
Definitely keep
asking.
me posted on how things are going with that.
I will. That's a great idea. Thank you.
So how old are your children? You said you have 2.
I do. I have an eldest boy who's 4 and almost a half. Yeah,
Okay.
he'll be 4.5 in March, and a girl who's 14 months.
Okay. So for the IVF treatment, was it for both pregnancies or was it for just one?
Oh yeah, for both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So at one point, before I go even ask this question, before you were diagnosed with any infertility, with infertility, did you struggle with any female reproductive issues at all? Like painful
No,
periods?
nothing. I was always thought I was super lucky, but keep this in mind for a further question down the road. I had very light periods. I never had cramps. I never had any issues. I was like,
Okay.
yes, I'm so lucky. This is not a big deal. 2 days later, I'm good. So definitely not what you want to hear at this point in your life, but thinking it's pretty cool when you're in your teens and 20s. So that kind of didn't flag anything for me because I didn't know better. I was on, the pill for a few years, and IUD, no issues. I was really lucky, which is hilarious, right? When you think about it, it's lucky until you spend your whole life trying to get pregnant after having spent your whole life trying not to get pregnant. But I was really lucky. I've never had pain, never got migraines, I'm very grateful that I didn't have to suffer and then have to suffer through IVF. So there is that positive side of things for sure.
People from our generation, I'm in my 40s and you said you're in your late 30s. So I find anyone from the 70s, 80s, we weren't as informed about the problems with extensively longer periods or extensively shorter periods and how that can actually affect our infertility as we get older. We think, okay, we can go on, have our education, and then we're going to be able to have children in our 30s, and then
Yeah.
we're struggling.
It's very true. You
Oh
spend
my
your
God.
whole life being told, like from grade 5 onwards, when there's a little bit of sex ed, be careful, sex leads to disease and pregnancy. So if you
Exactly.
don't want diseases, you don't want pregnancy, you better be really using contraceptives and or not having sex. Those are your
Exactly.
options. And be
Exactly.
aware, because if you have sex, you will get pregnant. That was the line I was raised with, for sure.
Exactly. Exactly. And what I've also realized is that they don't discuss that once you hit 30, it's going to be a problem. And that the option for freezing your eggs is out there, especially because we're trying to get our education. None of this information was provided to our generation. This generation, thank God, they're getting that information, but we didn't have that option.
No. Well, actually, one of the big original, maybe one of the original IVF clinics was the one in Calgary, Regional Fertility Program. And one
Okay.
of my original doctors was one of the founders of the IVF program in Canada. And she's since retired between my first rounds and my first kid and my second child.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but she was one of the original founders, and one of I call them IVF'ers, my friends that
Uh-huh.
have gone through IVF. So one of her close friends was within the first 10 IVF babies born in Canada. So
Oh,
86
wow.
was my birth year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so when you start talking to people and opening up, you see other people. And so, yeah, she was one of the first IVF babies born in 86, 85, 86
Oh,
in Canada,
wow.
which is really cool. So, yeah, it's totally new because we're the first generation where our peers could have been born with IVF to begin with.
Mm-hmm. 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 So, if you don't mind me asking, how long have you and your husband been married?
We've been together. We were just
Or
calculating.
together, I should say. Mm-hmm.
That's okay. No, we've been married, but we got married on our anniversary. So we actually kind of consider that we've been together the same, like way longer, because we were together for 4 years before we got married. So it's been 11 and a half years. So this June will
Wonderful.
be 12 years.
Okay.
Purposely did that so we didn't have to think so hard. We met
Good
on June
point.
1st and we got married on June 1st, 4 years later,
There you
even though it was
go.
a Wednesday, because we wanted to keep that anniversary. So,
Oh, oh,
yeah.
that's nice. That's really nice. That is really nice.
Yeah.
And how long, by the time you had decided that, okay, you guys are ready to be able to start having kids, how long did it take? How long did it take? Sorry, what I'm trying to say is, how long did you try to conceive before you realized that you had to go for infertility help?
Well, we were again over that 30 mark. I was 30. Oh, I should know these dates, and I'm sorry, I might not know them all.
It's okay.
32 and he was 33. No, I was 33 and he was 34. So we had finished school. We'd been working. My husband worked up north, and this was at the point in time where I owned my own business. So we hadn't even thought about trying for kids when we lived in different cities, and I was working a million hours a week. So it was when he went back to school and we had lived in the same city. We're like, okay, you know what? Now we can try for kids. But because we were a little bit older, we kind of flagged it a little bit earlier. They say 6 months of trying. We tried for just shy of 6 months. And my husband went to the doctor and got a sperm test done, and his numbers were so low that they immediately sent us for referral. I didn't even need to go through any initial testing because his sperm count and quality, everything was so abysmal, for lack of a better word, that he immediately got a referral.
Okay. So with your process with IVF treatment, so when did you know that you had to start going for IVF treatment for yourself? Your husband had to go through treatment. We're going to talk about that. But when did you know that you had to go for IVF treatment?
So this is where it was really, I would say, traumatic for myself. I distinctly remember. So he'd gone for his, we went in, that was the initial reason to get a referral. And we both went to the clinic, obviously, together. And they're like, okay, these are all the assessments you need to do. So we're like, okay, like whatever. I wasn't really stressed because I was like, whatever, it's not me. We're cool. So I went through all my hysteroscopy or HSG, GSH, all those tests, everything.
Yeah.
All the acronyms that you
Yeah.
need to get done. All the blood work, the day 4 blood work, there was day 4, day 9, all the initial tests. He did his sperm count again, and then we had our meeting. And she's like, okay, like here's your, your motility and your counts and everything are really low. And I'm like, oh, like I'm so sorry. And they're like, but really the biggest issue is you. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Husband, Sean. Oh, life is so tough. And then I'm like, pardon? And he's looking at me and I'm like, oh, it didn't even register what you just said to me, in a very clinical, non-anything confrontation. This is you. You have very low AMH. You have very low this, very low this. You have very low reserve. You have very low everything. Yeah, you guys don't even qualify in any realm for IUI. You need to go right to IVF, and the sooner you can do it, the better.
Okay.
Oh, and I didn't even have time to process it in the clinic because it was such a flip from what I thought we were going in for that I was completely floored. It took me probably weeks to kind of understand that. I'm like, oh, dear, like this is my issue more than it was my husband's. But we kind of had both, which is unfortunate because male factor is a little bit harder to comprehend because he can't fix as much with that. We worked on everything on his end as well. But yeah, so it was very much a shock because we went in thinking that he was the only issue, not me. And I was much bigger an issue than him.
So you were an athlete, you were eating healthy, you were taking great care of yourself. So you would assume, okay, it shouldn't be a problem. My eggs should be healthy without any issues. Sonohysteogram. That's what I was trying to remember the word. Sonohysteogram, yes.
Very good work. Thank you.
But so that is shocking. And so so immediately they're going to send you for IVF. So what was the process for the IVF in regards to medical treatments? Did they also recommend to you any supplements that you had to start taking to assist?
Yeah, so they do recommend the male supplements. They didn't really recommend the female supplements. So my husband took the amazing mixture of packages of like 15 pills. So he took those. I didn't take anything at that time. I was pretty healthy. I was eating pretty healthy. I was exercising every day. Like we'd already worked on the whole losing 10 pounds because maybe we weren't getting pregnant because of that. So I was at a good weight, all the rest of it. So they didn't recommend anything for that. One thing that is mandatory at our clinic is that we do a info session. So we did this info session where there's everyone, whatever, I'm guessing they do it once a week because it's whoever is now qualifying before you actually pay your money and you start the program, you need to do this info session where they walk through everything. And it was pretty intense. There was lots of same-sex couples, individual people. If you're doing egg freezing, you need to do the session as well as females. So there was every single person, every single option of a couple or individual was there, which I thought was really cool to see. Because wow, how far has our society come that everybody can be included in this?
Yes,
which was really cool. However, my husband almost passed out because they were talking about the egg retrieval, and he is not great with needles. And the poor guy I had to escort him out. So he missed half the session because I needed to go get him out of the room before he passed out. I appreciate that because it means he really cares about me. But yeah, it was a little bit extra informative maybe, but that's what they want to do. They want to make sure that if you're going to go through this, which it is a very intense emotional and physical process, that at least you have some vague idea of what's going on.
Yes.
Because even though we did that session, I really still had no idea what was going on, right? Like, how do you know until you've been there?
Exactly. So did you have to go through, I'm assuming you had to go through those injections that you had to take. I can't remember the process, but yeah. I remember I didn't get to that point where I had to go through the needles, but the friends of mine that have gone through it, they said it's so excruciating. You feel like a pincushion, and it's wonderful to have your partner there to support you. But how was that experience for you?
So as a dental hygienist, I'm able to inject other people. I have my local anesthetic. So needles have thankfully never been a huge issue for myself. However, it is really different sitting there. For me, it was that I picked different times. Everybody's program is different for what works for them. So in total, I went through 5 different rounds. I went through 3 egg retrievals. And so every single time I did it was a little bit different. But I had meds that I needed to take 12 hours apart, as well as something at a specific time in the middle of the day. So I had 3 different times a day in the first round with my son that I needed to do injections. And I was working full time. I wasn't open about infertility or any of this. My coworkers and I weren't close. It was a newer job. And I needed to pick secret times to go into public bathrooms to inject. And it was really unnerving. That alone was scary. I'm like, never mind trying to poke yourself. So I picked 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. because I knew I'd always be home by 7 p.m. And I knew I'd always be just getting out of the pool by 7 a.m. So those were my 2 times that I could kind of figure it out. But I remember sitting there, specifically the noon injection was one where I had to mix 2 different vials together. So it's a powder and it's a liquid, and you have to kind of suck out half the liquid and put it in with the powder, and then you suck out the mixture of the powder and the liquid and put it into another vial depending on your dosage. And because my hormone levels were very low, all of my dosages for every single round that I've done have been very high. And some of the reasons that my cycles were canceled with my second attempt were because I can't get my hormone levels high enough, and they can't keep you on hormones forever. So
Right.
I was on max doses on basically every single round that I've done, which really messes with like your weight and how you feel and what you want to eat and how tired you are and how happy you are. Never mind anything else that hopefully, you know, your body is trying to deal with. But the mixing of the vials, I couldn't remember the instructions, and I'm sitting in this cubicle, and I had just left. I was teaching at the time, and I'd left the clinic where I was teaching, and I was like, I'm going to be late for my first injection. It has to be done within, like, you have to be precise. And that for me was the stressful part, is I'm like, if I can be in the right place and do this, I can do it. But trying to be secretive about pulling out my meds out of the fridge or getting them out of the cupboard, depending on the time of day, and making sure that students aren't in the bathroom at the same time I am. And I'm in a stall, like I don't have a counter to put all my drugs on, and I'm laying them on my lap and trying to hide them from the door so people don't see them by my feet. Like that I found so stressful.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have private office. It's not like I could have gone into a room and closed the door. So that I found to be really hard. And that was the toughest part for me with round number 1, trying to get through the injections, was like trying to be secretive and trying to be on time in a life that doesn't allow for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cushion thing, that's lovely too. I mean, it's like trying to just make sure you get everywhere on time. And my stomach, I have pictures, were so bruised because if you just get a little blood vessel, you bleed and you get a bruise, and then you need a new place and you bleed and you get a bruise, and you get a new place and you bleed and you bruise. So I know a lot of people that prefer to inject in their thigh or their glute, you can kind of do, but just because I knew I'd be doing it in perhaps a public-ish kind of place.
Oh, right. Exactly.
At least pull up your shirt. It's hard to pull down your pants.
But and it works out in your favor that you are very familiar with using needles, because all of my friends were like, oh, and my husband, my partner, whomever, you know, had to help, you know, even people's sisters like had to learn how to put the injection in, and they're sitting there stooping over and saying, all right, this right glute, we'll take it this time. The left glute, you know, just, yeah, because the stomach either can take any longer.
I've never injected myself prior to this, but at least like, I knew how to load a needle, and it's still weird being like, hey, deep breath to yourself, but at least I was able to. I also didn't have a choice. I mean, I wasn't working from home. My husband was up north in Fort McMurray. So it was like, you got to that's what I'm doing. I couldn't take 14 days off work to just stay home and inject, which is, I know a lot of people, since I've heard, do that. They take off time for their stims, which is amazing. What a luxury to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And or to work from home or take some half days or whatever. And I'm maybe a little bit sad that I didn't look into that ability further, or taking some sick time.
Mm-hmm.
But I was so dedicated to work pre-child because I love to work, and I just plowed ahead, and I made it work, right? So it's okay. But in retrospect, my mental health might have been better had I taken some personal time to deal with the stress.
I was just about to ask you that question. And as you said, it was very stressful on your mental health, managing this. You said you and your husband went through 3 rounds?
So my first was only 1 round, and I was so lucky.
Oh, wow.
And I believe in science, and I'm like, sweet, we got pregnant. This is amazing. How great. It was my number 2 that was much more stressful, much more intense. And kind of, we looked into everything possible. I was so lucky on my first. I know that now, having gone through not an easy child. But I was so lucky that it only took 1 round. It was a fresh transfer. I was on max dosages and everything, but I didn't have any fluid when they went to go transfer, and it worked, and it was amazing. I mean, as IVF goes, it was amazing.
Okay. And in regards to mental health, and I mean, some partners share how things affect them. Some people don't. Everyone has a different way of expressing themselves when they're going through certain things. But how did it affect your partner's mental health?
He was fine, I think. It was hard because we were working apart, right? So he lived very far apart. He came home every 10 days. And so I would say, honestly, when we were trying to conceive naturally, that was more stressful. I had charts and calendars and pills and everything under the sun happening because we only had certain windows of opportunity when he was home. Whereas kind of when we went into IVF, it was like, sweet science, take over. Like, we'd been trying so hard and it was so stressful on our relationship because it really involved both of us.
Yeah.
Whereas when we went into IVF, I was like, hey, they're giving me a schedule. I have to follow these instructions. Like, I'm a type A, like to be in school, follow the rule person. I can do this. Like, give it to me. I straight.
Yes.
I got it, right? So that was almost a relief, aside from the fact that you're like, okay, this is a major deal, but we thankfully had the funds, and we weren't given any options. I think sometimes when people are like, oh, try IUI, or, lose some weight, or work on your healthy habits, or stop smoking and then try, or if you're given other options, it can almost make it harder. But because we weren't given any options, it was like, do IVF and do IVF now. It was like, that was the only course of action. There were no choices. So we did it, which in that sense made it less stressful than what we'd already been trying. So it was kind of an opposite effect, I think, than some people, because we knew we didn't have a choice. It was do this or nothing.
Right. You mentioned about the funding, and I know going for IVF is very expensive. Mm-hmm. I think if I remember, this was a few years back, it was like $15,000 to start. Correction. The $15,000 mentioned is the fertility grant amount given by the Canadian government in Ontario for women ages 43 and under. Find details on the different provincial fertility grant funding opportunities on the Freedom to Know Wellness blog. It was some exorbitant amount of, and I remember thinking, my God. And so they were mentioning that they were offering birth mothers, I believe it was a grant. I can't remember the percentage, but there was a grant that you'd receive that helps cut down the amount you'd have to pay because it was so expensive here in Ontario. But the cutoff limit is if you were turning 43 in 12 months, then you weren't eligible for it. In Calgary, and even Edmonton, I don't believe so, but do they have any funding that you're aware of or that you were made aware of?
No, so I'm pretty sure Ontario is one of, or maybe the only province that has any funding. When I was working on my second pregnancy, I joined what I thought was every single Facebook group for Canada and the US regarding IVF, surrogacy, lining, like everything possible. I did much more research on child number 2 than I did on child number 1, because I just kind of threw up my hands and science worked on child number 1.
Right.
Child 2 was a whole different ball game. So I learned a lot more and got a lot more involved in the community and all the different options available for my second pregnancy that I didn't need to, thankfully, for the first. But Alberta doesn't have any funding. So you need to pay out of pocket or out of pocket or out of pocket. Those are your options.
Yeah. And it's pretty pricey, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. I calculated, maybe conservatively, but we've spent about $70,000 on our 2 children.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That's a lot.
Expensive. It's expensive. Yeah.
Yes. But they're worth it though.
Oh, yeah.
They are worth it. And so tell us, you mentioned that the second pregnancy was the most difficult to conceive. Was that the one that also caused the traumatic childbirth?
No, well, but they both were emergency C-sections, actually. Okay. But the first one was more the trauma. So I was, as I said, kind of a dedicated worker. I've had all these different jobs and I was teaching dental assisting and I was just plowing along. So September semester rolled around, back to school, and I was due October 12th. And so September, like still 8 months, like I should have a good 6 weeks of work left. I didn't want to start using my mat leave ahead of time or anything. I was going to stop work at the end of September. Seemed totally fair. Do a full 4 weeks of work and then have 2 weeks off before the baby was due. And one morning I woke up and my husband's up north, still working away. And I'm like, I don't know. I just don't feel great. Like, I'm 8 months pregnant. This is fine. Halfway through September, like I still have lots of time. It's all good. I wake up, I have a little chai latte because a little caffeine is supposed to get the baby going. I'm like, I don't know. Still feels funny. Whatever. It's still early enough. I'll go for my swim. So I head off to work. I go for my swim. Yeah. Okay. No movement really, but he's not, I didn't know it was a he. We didn't pick the gender, but it is a boy. But, not doing a ton of movement, but that's okay. Whatever. go to work. I'm like, oh, Wednesdays were always my really long day, a lot of standing, and it was fine, but it was just a long day. And I'm like, I'm telling the other instructors, like, it just doesn't feel right. Something doesn't feel right. Oh, the baby's dropped. He's coming anytime now. He's just dropped. You're fine. I text my good girlfriend who's gone through IVF as well with her first. And I'm like, I don't know. She's like, eat some sugar, do some jumping jacks. I'm like, okay, pop some M&Ms. I've never had much of an appetite while pregnant. So eating for me was always hard, even after nausea and whatever. Food wasn't appealing when I was pregnant. I'm like, okay, I can choke back some M&Ms, have some orange juice, like do some jumping jacks. I'm like, still doesn't feel right. Like, I don't know. I just feel off. Oh yeah, your baby's just dropped. It'll be fine. So on the way home, I go by a hospital, the Rocky View in Calgary. And my girlfriend's like, just stop. But my dog's at home. He needs to go pee. I've been gone for hours. Like, Allison, just stop. So I drive into the hospital. I pay for parking. Less than 25 minutes later, I have a baby. So literally, I have the parking ticket. I parked at 5:20 or 5:30, and my baby was born at 5:55.
Oh, he wasn't waiting.
Pardon?
He was not waiting.
No, because he had now I'm not going to remember the name, the heart rate pattern that is pre-terminal. So I walked up to the admission and I'm like, I hate to bug you guys. Like, I get it. I'm kind of in healthcare. I hate when people complain. I'm sure everything's fine, but my friend's telling me I should come in. I'm sure it's nothing. They're like, okay, there's a woman clearly in labor waiting to be admitted. Like, I can see her standing. I'm like, you should probably help her first. Like, she looks like she needs a room. Like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, get your healthcare card. They put me in the room. They strap on the big bands and they get my blood pressure cuff on or whatever. And the nurse is chatting. They're like, I'm so sorry. Like, this must be such a pain when people come in and complain, right? Like, I don't want to be that person. I'm sure it's fine. And I can hear the heart rate. I'm like, oh, see, there's a heart rate. It's totally fine. She goes out of the room and comes back and looks at her little piece of paper. Have you eaten anything? I'm like, oh, I did eat some M&Ms. I just want to make sure everything was okay. She's like, okay, make sure you don't eat anything else. And that should have been my red flag, because I know that when the doctor says don't eat anything, they're thinking about surgery. Mm-hmm. Didn't really go off because I was busy texting my husband. Yeah, everything's fine. Like, I can't believe I stopped. Now the dog's gonna have an accident in the house. Like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll whatever. It'll be fine. She comes back. She's like, so we're doing a C-section in about 5 minutes. And all of a sudden, like 15 people come into the room. I'm like, pardon? What's going on? She's like, so you have this pre-terminal heart. She didn't actually say that. Actually, it was my doctor at the 2-week post checkup that told me. And that's really when it hit home how bad it was. So I didn't really understand how bad it could have been until 2 weeks after. And I was really grateful for the emergency team for that in retrospect, but I was quite angry that my doctor let it slip instead of being like, did you know this is what happened? So I'm head there a little bit. But I've obviously carried that with me for almost 5 years now, right? So that was really not done well. The emergency room was done beautifully. I was so impressed. It's one of those moments where you're like, our healthcare system, when you're in an emergency, is so good. And I'm so grateful for it. Sometimes chronic issues in our healthcare system, I don't think work very well, which I think you can probably attest to. Mm-hmm. However, when you're in an emergency, I've heard and experienced how well things work. And not even in an emergency that's that close to being an emergency, but people that are diagnosed with very late stage cancers or cardiac issues or whatever. It seems like our healthcare system does really well, which is amazing. But she came in, the same nurse that saw me, you can't eat anything. We are going to put an IV in your arm right now. And I'm like, oh, like birthing class. They tell you the only thing you should remember from class, ask if you can wait. I'm like, oh, can I wait? Yes, here, please. I was so proud of myself for that. Like, the only thing I'm supposed to remember from birthing class, ask if you can wait. I would like to please wait. They're like, oh my goodness. No, you're having the baby now. Oh, okay. Does someone, meanwhile, she's already putting in an IV. I'm a really hard start though. And it is rare a nurse, even the most experienced anesthesiologist, can get me on the first go. So I had to literally, I'm dialing my husband. I need someone to talk to him. I can't do an IV at the same time. So she got it on the second try, but that one didn't work. She got on to the next one. And
sorry to interrupt you, just to confirm, you were at 9 months now, or were you?
8.5.
Oh, 8.5. Okay.
Not even quite. So he was born at 36 and 2.
Okay.
Yeah. So I pass off the phone and somebody else tells my husband, I don't know who's there. There's like 15 people in the room. Someone is taking off my pants and my underwear. Someone else is taking off my shirt through the IV. This other nurse is putting an IV in this arm now. Someone is talking to my husband. So it is like all happening within seconds. I am in a wheelchair and going down, and they are talking to me as we're going. It is crazy. It is like in 2 seconds, I'm in the room. So they were talking to me on the way. I remember them wheeling. I'm like, as long as someone has my rings and my phone, like we'll be fine. I don't know. Does someone have my stuff? Because you don't think about things when you're kind of in that moment of what the heck is going on, right? And
because you said, no one had told you what the situation was.
No, they just said the baby's not doing really well, so he's going to come right now. So I only really looked into the preterminal heart rate pattern stuff when the doctor at my 2-week checkup had let it slip that was the reason. And then I kind of had done some digging, and that's when I found out that was the heart rate pattern, which they rarely see because normally the infant has passed in utero. So that was more traumatic after the fact because he was probably minutes to hours from being stillborn. So I was so lucky, so lucky. So it was like thankfully my friend was like, just go in. But something like I didn't feel great all day. And so I went in. And so I hate being that person that bugs people, but I'm so, so, so grateful, obviously, that I did. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those life lessons, and doctors always tell it, if you don't feel good, go in. If you don't feel good, go in. But it's hard when you're that person that doesn't want to be a pain, because it's not in your nature to go and bug people. Right. But I think especially in pregnancy, you have to be that person, right? Your other person is relying on you to be that person.
Yeah.
So thankfully it was pre-COVID, so there's no masks. I remember the nurse getting me to lean my head on her head while they did my spinal. And I got the other nurse to give her my phone. So she videoed everything because I was there by myself. My mom,
yes, because your husband wasn't there. Yeah.
My husband's up north. My mom lives relatively close, but I had actually got my husband to text her to go walk the dog because I still didn't register what was going on. The dog was my baby. I needed him to go pee. So my mom was off walking the dog.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm in the ER having a C-section.
So the C-section overall, how was that experience? I mean, you're not seeing what's happening. Yeah. How was that experience for you?
Again, because it was kind of a state of shock. It wasn't like I'd planned on that necessarily. Mm-hmm. Because I'd gone through IVF, I don't think I felt a loss from having to do a C-section that I know a lot of people experience. Mm-hmm. I'd already undergone major surgery on my knee. So it wasn't my first time having anesthetic. So I was lucky for that. I hadn't had a lot of medical issues in the past, but thankfully I knew that I was okay with some anesthetic because I'd had my knee surgery. So that was a blessing in disguise that I knew I was okay. It was weird being there by myself, but the anesthesiologist was amazing. The nurse was amazing. You don't really see the doctors, but I heard them talking and being like, do you know if it's a boy or a girl? I'm like, no. And they're like, it's a boy. I'm like, cool, I guess. Like, what am I supposed to say? Mm-hmm. I don't know. And the nurse was great, like taking pictures and videoing and things, which was awesome. The C-section, I think the worst part was being sewn up afterwards, because for me, especially, the adrenaline had started to go down from the emergency. Okay. And they don't necessarily want to keep topping you up with more drugs because they need you to start being a mother.
Yes.
So you don't want to have more. And so that was hard. The feeling of being pulled and manipulated and kind of like, I know it kind of sounds gross, but it is kind of gross. But you hear the vacuum sucking out all the extra liquid. And then there's this pulling and lots of pressure and lots of pulling. And I found that really hard. So that wasn't my favorite.
Does the little one need help, or is she okay?
No, she'll be okay. I've got help there. It's okay.
Okay, so I wanted to make sure. I said,
if you need screaming back there.
No, it's okay. If you need to stop, I was like, okay, I'm going to give you the chance just in case.
Thank you.
So
Something just crossed my mind, but it's so difficult with whatever is available from the government for medical support. But I'm just thinking, even in these prenatal classes, they don't fully explain to you, or are they giving you videos? I didn't get that far, but are they giving you videos of what would happen if you wanted? First of all, some people, they want a C-section, and that's fine, elective C-section. But some people, they still want to have it natural, but there's always the possibility of having a C-section due to emergencies such as yourself. So was anything provided to say, okay, this is what's going to happen if you were to have a C-section? Because I know they tell you what happens in the natural process, but did they provide any of that information for you?
Yeah, we had part of the course. It wasn't that long. It was like 2 weekends or a Saturday and a Sunday or something. And it was like, this is obviously how natural birth works, and this is how a C-section birth works, and this is the layer, and this is the layer, and this is the layer that they're all cutting through. And then what I really distinctly remember is there was a card game we played, and they're like, lay out all the things you're hoping for in your ideal birth. And so you're supposed to pick like natural or drugs, or forceps or no forceps, or like all these different things that, this is all the different options that could happen. And then it's pick the 2 that are the most important to you, because everything else might go out the window. So
right.
Be aware that everything that is your ideal might never happen. And I was always, again, I don't know if it's an IVF thing, because I've already thrown out all those, oh, I'd like to get pregnant on my honeymoon, or I'd like to get pregnant on this day. I'd like to have a fall baby. I'd like to have a summer baby. Who cares? Just be pregnant. So that had already kind of gone out the window. So I was never this is my birth plan and this is the way it's going to happen. I'm pretty sure the only thing, and I laughed about this after the fact, is I need drugs. I want drugs. I believe in science. I want drugs. They're there for a reason. Give them to me. I am very up to date on my vaccinations, and I'm okay with having some medication to help me through this process.
Yes.
That's how I got there in the first place, is through drugs. So I'm okay with that. And that was the only thing. So I laughed because, of course, I had drugs. I had a C-section. So right? So I was lucky in the sense that really, when we played that game of throwing out every other thing, the only thing that I said that I really wanted to keep was being able to have medication available.
Okay.
And I had that.
Yes.
And so I didn't have a natural birth, and that's fine. And I have an alive baby. That's great. Those were my options.
Right.
So
exactly.
That's cool. Right. So you can't pick it all, and you have to pick what's going to work for you. Right. Or the baby in that case. So I was lucky because I didn't have to throw a bunch of my wish list, so to speak, out the window, because I had managed my expectations ahead of time pretty reasonably, I think. And so I wasn't disappointed in that. Yes, it would have been nice to have my husband there, but he's really scared of all this stuff anyway. So, I mean, whatever, but like, you can't make it all work. Right. So.
Right. No, I've heard of husbands passing out in the operation room or even delivery room, which either way, because they couldn't handle it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they couldn't handle it. So now you've had the C-section, you're going through recovery. And sorry, going back to what I was stating beforehand, with you having those classes, it helped prepare you mentally, emotionally, psychologically for a situation like this. So even though you're not like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? You're like, okay, well, I kind of have a general idea of what's supposed to happen. But, the textbook scenario and having the lived experience is 2 different things.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you're lucky enough to have a planned C-section, I've heard it's much less stressful because you're like, sweet, I'm going in, I get my epidural, I've got my husband or my partner or my wife or whoever here, like, we're all good. I got this, right? Like, we're set. And then you're like, yep, cutting through layer number 1, chatting with the doctors, cool, we're all set. It's still major surgery, but you're mentally like, I'm there. Whereas I'm like, what the heck is just happening to me? I was just sitting in my car and paying for my parking ticket. Like, I think my mom I talked to the anesthesiologist about my mom walking the dog. Like, throughout my C-section, the anesthesiologist is like, so, like, what's going on? He's trying to distract me from life. I'm like, well, my husband's working up north. I think he's going to start driving home right now. And my mom would probably come really soon because she lives close, but I told her to go walk the dogs. So she might be on her way. I don't know. I'm just going to have a baby now. So I always had a totally different mental process than someone who's like, okay, this was the plan and this is what we're doing.
So now the adrenaline's cutting down, and you mentioned the experience that you had having that feeling of being sewn back up.
Yeah.
And so how long before your husband was able to arrive to the hospital?
He got there around midnight or so. So my mom was able to come and meet me in the recovery room, but she apparently had to get through some battles because not everyone wants their mom there, and I wouldn't want my mom there. That is not our relationship. We're close, but we're not like look at me half naked or nursing kind of close. But I was by myself in the recovery from having had a C-section and a new baby. So she apparently was at the front desk being like, I need to see my daughter. I don't know if you have authorization. And she's like, she just had an emergency C-section and her husband works out of town.
Right.
Like, oh, let me go find out if she can come in. And so they went to like ask me. I'm like, yeah, she can come in. Like, please, I have this baby. We have no name picked out, but there's a baby boy sailing on. Like, she can come in. We're good. So yeah, and I actually know that I went through shock because my body temperature plummeted and they kept having to take him away to go under the heating lights because he was getting so cold on me that he had to be over there. So it was great to have my mom there because they kept having to put warm blankets and stuff on me to warm me back up. And she was able to at least hang out with my son underneath the heating lamps, which was good.
So what did they explain to you about your body going through shock? Because really and truly, it's like, you're like, okay, well, what's happening here? Like you were aware, but you weren't really aware.
Yeah. Well, I had enough first aid training and I used to be a lifeguard and all this stuff. So I knew the signs of shock. And I also, looking back, I kept talking about his nose because I have this relatively nice little nose. My husband has a huge nose, which he sometimes gets mistaken for looking like a Jewish individual because sometimes Jewish people have really cool, distinct noses, but he's not. However, he has a very cool, distinct nose. And I just kept rambling on about his really cute nose that didn't look like a Jewish nose. What inappropriate conversation. I was like, this is so bad. So I could hear myself talking while I'm shivering and yeah, you're in shock. Oh yeah, let's talk about the nose more. Oh yeah, you're cold. No, you're in shock. Oh, let's talk about his nose. Like, oh my goodness, just be quiet. So I knew that I was in shock.
Oh my gosh.
I managed it to save my life. Like I was just yammering on about nonsense effectively. And I knew I was in shock because I was cold and I just kept talking garbage. Like it was, nothing racist or stereotyping at all. It was just my brain yammering on.
Oh my goodness.
So I was very well aware of what was happening. I just couldn't fix it.
Yeah, you couldn't fix it. You're like, okay, you know what? Let's go with the flow.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the 2-week post-op. So first of all, how long were you in the hospital before you got released?
It was a long time. So that was also part of kind of the trauma for me, aside from the birth itself. And then my husband finally got there, which was great. But then because whether it was because he was officially preemie or not, his blood sugars were really low. So obviously he had some in utero issues. They send in the cord and the placenta to be analyzed, but you rarely hear back. They told me we probably wouldn't. So they don't know why he was preterminal. But there was obviously something happening, whether it was lack of nutrients, lack of oxygen, who knows? When he came out, his whole left side was really purple. And the doctor the next day was like, but you didn't have a vaginal birth. Why would he be like, they thought his arm was broken maybe, or that he had a concussion. But I'm like, it was C-section. So there was a lot of confusion within the doctors, what was happening too. So he eventually kind of regained his color on that side. So we didn't have to go for an x-ray, but that was the first thought that needed to happen. And then his blood sugars were really low. And then because my body wasn't ready, I had very little milk supply / none. So that didn't come in until day 4. And so that was a whole nother thing. The breastfeeding thing is, again, another podcast probably, but it was like, okay, so now we need to do the pump and the icing and the bottle feeding. And like, it was a whole big thing over and over. So his blood sugars were really low. So he kept having to get heel pokes and extra sugar to be increasing his blood sugar to get back to a normal level.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd work on the pumping, feeding, icing, pumping, feeding, icing, or pumping, icing, feeding, and working on that. And then that took him a couple of days to get his blood sugars back to normal. And then he got jaundice. So we had to stay another night in the hospital under the blue lights in order to get the jaundice back to normal. So we were in there for 4 nights and I was going completely stir crazy. It was not my most pleasant experience at all. And the lack of communications between the night doctor and the day doctor and the night nurse and the day nurse really was hard because everyone had their own protocol. And it seemed like every time the shift changed, there was a new idea of what they wanted to do with me. And I found that to be really, really hard.
So just to clarify, they never tested him when you mentioned about one side of him looking purple. They never tested to assess if he had a stroke in birth?
No,
Okay.
I guess there wasn't the signs for that. It was more like, and I think personally what it was is I felt like he was under my ribs the whole time when I was pregnant. Like I never felt that he dropped. I think he jammed himself in a way that probably cut off some of the oxygen or something is my guess. I mean, very uneducated guess, but
the circulation, yeah.
Yes, especially since I've been pregnant since, and it felt very different. So he just always felt like he was completely wedged underneath the left side of me. So that means you have to lay on your left when you're pregnant. I'm laying on his head and he's jammed under a rib or a bone or whatever. So I think he somehow got himself wedged somewhere under something in me, and that cut off some circulation somewhere. Because in my second pregnancy, it didn't feel at all like that. It felt like, oh, you're where you're supposed to be, not underneath a bone where you can't move at all. So I think probably that's just where he was sitting or something, because the color came back relatively quickly within 24 hours. I think that alleviated their concerns on that.
So I'm going to backtrack a couple questions I have for you. How long were you in shock for? How long until they remedied that?
Maybe 3 hours-ish until my temperature kind of got back to normal again, I'd say. Because I was in recovery for a good hour and a half. So it's probably about an hour and a half after I got to the room, I'd say.
And so your healing while you were in the hospital, it went pretty smoothly, or did you have any issues, any complications?
No, the only complication I had is I seem to have been allergic to their disposable underwear or their pads that they provide, the plastic on their pads. Okay. So I got the inside of my legs completely peeled, like not 2nd degree, 3rd degree, but the whole layer of skin on the insides of both of my legs completely peeled off in sheets, completely. And I have weird eczema, like not crazy, but I have some skin allergies, not traumatic. It's not a big deal. I put on a little bit of steroid cream every so often and it's fine. I live in Alberta. We have no humidity. Most people have skin issues in Alberta.
Right.
And I don't have any allergies per se, but something in one of those 2 products, whether it be the disposable cottony underwear or the plastic in their specific after birthing pads that are ginormous, I had a reaction to it, and the skin peeled off on the inside of my legs.
Oh my.
Apart from that, everything was fine. I had no issues urinating. I had no issues going to the bathroom. I was very lucky. Everything was great. My suture was done beautifully. I had to get a hysteroscopy later on because there was an adhesion due to the C-section, which does happen. So I didn't know that at the time, but that was unfortunate. And so that was a problem from the C-section, but not knowing at that point. But yeah, the only thing was this weird skin thing.
So how long afterwards did you have to go for this hysteroscopic? Hysterectomy. I'm trying to know the word. This is not coming out. Thank you.
Oh, I know. And it has a funny little syllable in it too.
Yes.
So that was after 2 failed transfers, trying to get pregnant the second time.
Okay. We'll talk about that shortly, but I just wanted to clarify some other issues with the first pregnancy. Sure. While you're in the hospital, as your son is going through all these different treatments or trying to, heal him from all these complications and the jaundice that happened, did they provide you with like a social worker to speak with, to be able to, seek counsel, because this was a traumatic experience for you and also for the baby? Nothing.
There was nothing like that. The only thing that happened is the nurse came to the house after I was already at home.
Okay.
But that's mostly to check on the baby. And they do a little bit of a mental health check, but not much, but they do a little. But no, nothing. It was very clinical and very, this is the way we're doing it. And this is the regime to get your breast milk to come in. And this is how we're going to pump. And this is the blood sugars. And everyone was very kind, but there wasn't any resources. And because it was my first baby, I didn't expect any differently. Like I didn't any resources. I hadn't had to do this deep dive that I did for my second pregnancy into supports or IVF or anything else. I was like, well, this is what it is. Like, this is it, which,
So your 2-week post-op, you're out of the hospital now, and you've now gone to see your gynecologist for the 2-week post-op. And
Yeah.
did they speak to you about providing any type of support for you mentally, emotionally, what have you, with
No,
this traumatic birth?
no, we don't see a gynecologist either. We just see a family doctor, one that specializes or has hospital privileges. And you see a specialist if you have what's deemed to be a risky pregnancy. But even though you're conceived with that through IVF, you're not considered high risk.
Okay.
So I was just with a family doctor that has hospital privileges, and they were like, oh, wow, it's so interesting to see this chart. And I'm like, yeah. They're like, yeah, because we rarely see a pre-terminal heart rate pattern on paper. We read about it in textbooks. And I'm like, pardon? Like, well, that's why you had your baby so fast, was because he was pre-terminal. I'm like, pardon? Oh, cool. She's like, oh, you guys are so lucky, and what a healthy baby, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to work through that now. So yeah.
So how did you work through that? Because that is something to swallow. And then, like, did you deep dive into to find out what exactly this meant? Like, what happened?
So yeah, there's not much diving, to be perfectly candid. It's exactly as it sounds, and it has so I always forget that the wave symbol, heart rate. And it's in textbooks, but apparently you don't see it very often, because it often unfortunately leads to either stillbirth or miscarriage. And so it's not seen as a live birth typically. So having it in somebody's birth record is really rare. And that's kind of the end of the deep dive, is that I was really lucky that I went in when I did. And had I not, he would have not survived. So that was what was hard to swallow, is it was like, wow, being stubborn and thinking you know something about the healthcare system is definitely not the way to go when you're pregnant. Like, thank goodness I listened to my friend and my husband, but he's a guy, what do guys know, that said you should go to the hospital, because it's just not, I don't think, most people's nature to want to be a burden on the healthcare system. Like, that's not what the average person likes to do, right? It's not, no one wants to feel like they're being useless, or they're, putting a dent in the system, or they're like, I saw other people that were in labor in the waiting room. Like, they totally should have been before me. You don't want to be that person. And so that was kind of my biggest takeaway, was like, first of all, very, very, very lucky. And second of all, you know what, sometimes it's okay to be the squeaky wheel, because you have to vouch for yourself, and it's okay to do that sometimes. It doesn't mean you're going to become a person who's, a complete hypochondriac, or that you're always causing problems in the healthcare system, or that you're that person that people talk about. It's okay to vouch for yourself and do what's right when you know what's right. And that comes now, right, when you're thinking about your kids, being like, we have to go to the hospital because you're not healthy, and that's okay. That's why these systems are in place, but it takes some time to get there. And I just had an early wake up call with that.
Yeah, you said a lot that has helped me just to be able to realize that so many, like, I don't know if it's within our nature as women, not all women, but a lot of us as women, we don't want to complain, we want to make sure that we're not being, I don't remember the term right now, but just being the person that's being, argumentative, or, hypochondriac, as you said, to say, okay, well, maybe I need the additional help, but you did. And thank God you did get the help that you received. But after now, you have your son,
Now, mind you, your focus is, okay, I got to focus on my son. I got to focus on life in general. But did you find like after, some months later, even a year later, anything coming back to you in regards to the trauma that this has affected you mentally or emotionally?
Yes and no. I like to pretend I'm a writer. So I technically wrote a book that then I tried to get published, and it's kind of just been on my back burner. So I worked my way through it by writing this book that has had no end to it. So you see, you've got a few business opportunities to follow up with me on. But I did write a book about IVF and the struggles and all the details and the support and lack thereof and the birth and working through it. And that really helped me kind of to journal through it, so to speak. But then also because life is just what life is, COVID hit. And so then there was other things. He was only 6 months, almost to the day, when COVID was officially declared and we were on complete lockdown.
Yes.
So it was like, okay, now I am bored out of my mind. And we moved, or my son and I moved up to be with my husband. So I was in a different city in a rental house, not at home, not with anyone I knew, and now completely isolated in a house that was gross because it was our rental. So it was really, really weird to be in that experience. And so that kind of just, because of COVID, I didn't really have that same, okay, like real life had stopped for the whole world, never mind anything else. So it's hard. What I find now is that with my 14-month-old, even last year, she went through her first full year. I was like, wow, is this because you're a girl and he was a boy? Is this because you weren't preemie and he was? Or is this because you haven't experienced COVID and he did?
Right.
And it's very like the world was really different. And he was only 6 months. We went from going swimming a couple times a week to not seeing anybody, to not leaving the house, to not doing anything. And so that was a bigger navigation because the whole world was having to go through it. And so it was like, cool. Thank goodness I have this little person to keep me company and things, even though it's boring in the house, we have each other. Whereas like the whole world is going through that. So I didn't necessarily have that because I think COVID took over everyone's life.
Exactly. So you had so much things compounding, like events that was happening at that time, compounding, that you didn't really have time to really think about, the trauma until later on. But I'm so glad that you wrote the book. And when did you write the book? This was during the time, I think you said, during the time of COVID? Okay. Okay. And so this also discussed the your experience with trying to conceive your daughter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which was much more complicated.
So tell us about that.
I'll try to make it shorter because I feel like we've already been talking forever. But I started when he was 1. I met with the clinic again, and they're like, yeah, the sooner you can get on this, the better. Like, you're that much older. But we had 1 frozen embryo still, I believe. Yeah, 1 frozen left. And so, okay, protocol is to do a frozen transfer. But the first attempt, they extended it longer because my lining just wouldn't get thick enough. Hence the short periods throughout my whole life. And I would have fluid if they put me on the oral testosterone or oral testosterone gel and suppository estrogen and more medications and more shots and more of everything. So I had estrogen patches literally all over my stomach. And I had to do androgel, testosterone on my arms, and suppositories. And
sorry to interrupt you. Testosterone or progesterone?
No, testosterone.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I didn't understand that. Okay.
No, yeah, it's like everything under the sun of different variations and medications and formats. And then that round got canceled, and then did it again, and that round got canceled. Then had the hysteroscopy. Because they were like, well, maybe there's a little bit of a lesion. So did the hysteroscopy, and there was a slight adhesion, sorry. So they're like, well, maybe this will help with the fluid and with the lining thickness. And then I honestly believe that they kind of did a Hail Mary, but they shouldn't have. So I was always a little bit resentful about that. On my 3rd attempt, my doctor was retiring, and I think she wanted to clear the books. I only had 1 frozen embryo. We'd already gone through 2 attempts that were canceled. And she's like, well, the lining's not great, but there's no fluid this time. You've had the hysteroscopy. We've extended your medications for as long as possible. We've done all the testosterone and progesterone and estrogen and everything. I guess it's not progesterone at that point. It's just estrogen, testosterone, and all the other drugs. Let's give it a try. Never doing, let's give it a try if you only have 1 embryo left, right? Unless that's
wow.
So it didn't work. And I have the picture of the transfer and I knew it didn't work. Like I knew it wasn't going to work. And because it didn't seem like it was, I don't know. I don't thought I was supposed to. I just felt like I wasn't ready. I didn't feel like my body felt the same as it did before. And so that was really disappointing that it didn't work. And especially because I really felt like it wasn't going to work. And so at that point, because now I'd been already doing this for 14 months, trying to get pregnant again, I had already been deep diving into thin lining groups on Facebook, and we'd started to look at surrogacy through the US because we don't really qualify as a heterosexual couple in Canada. I didn't want to be on a wait list for 4 more years.
Okay.
Just the waiting time in Canada is so long. I'd looked at different clinics in the US, in Arizona, because I have the ability to have people that have houses down there that I could stay at. I'd looked at clinics in California. We'd interviewed a few clinics for surrogacy and looked seriously at candidates for that. And then I ended up finding people specifically from Calgary that tend to go to this one clinic in the Czech Republic, in Brno. So not in Prague, but in Brno, Czech Republic. And so we decided to try that. It's way cheaper than at home. And the service and everything was supposed to be exceptional. You have to be a heterosexual couple. That's their government laws to undergo IVF in that country at the moment. But even including the airfare and the hotels and the food and everything, it was astronomically cheaper. I think everything total was about $6,000 versus about $16,000 for a whole round.
Oh, wow.
So I did get the drugs and everything here, which was complicated. You had to get your doctor to sign off on the prescriptions that came from the Czech Republic. So that was a little convoluted. I ended up getting drugs from the clinic in Edmonton because they wouldn't sell them to me from the clinic in Calgary because I wasn't using them as a clinic. We have a friend who's a friend of a pharmacist, and they were able to source some IVF drugs that I couldn't get otherwise. So I had to be very resourceful and start vouching for myself, that kind of, taking charge of your own medical to make it work. And then my period wasn't coming, and we thought we'd have to cancel the whole thing. And it was right before Omicron came out. So we kind of had this window where I had childcare lined up for my son, and my husband could work remote. I could work remote partially so that we wouldn't lose all of our income for being away. So it was like everything was going to work. So thankfully my period came, but it was 4 days late. I'm like, this is the problem when you don't have a lining and you're hyped up on adrenaline all the time. It changes your cycle. And then all of this is dependent on that. And it's frustrating because it's one more thing you can't control. Everything's so dependent. You can't just quit your job because you're waiting for your period to come. It might never come. It's so complicated, right? So we went to the Czech Republic. It was great because we got a holiday and we got to work, and it was lovely and less stressful. The clinic was walking distance from the place we rented. We both worked a little bit. We had some time together, which was nice. And my husband, we figured out, has a very high body temperature, which was contributing to his lack of good sperm quality.
Right. Yes.
So we had just started to look into that, but he's a very warm sleeper. And so I was on all of my stuff, doing whatever I was doing, totally different protocol than what I'd had before. I didn't know if that was better or worse. It hadn't worked for 3 times. So, throw it to the wind. Let's see if this will work. I don't know if it was good or bad, but my husband felt like he was super hot the whole time we were there. And when he gave his sample, they were like, well, it wasn't very good, but I guess we'll use it. And we're like, okay, what other option do we have at this point? Here's my eggs ready for retrieval. Here's you, we're doing this, right? So, and at that point, my husband came home to be with our son, and I stayed there by myself for the transfer.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, you have to divide and conquer,
Yeah,
right?
you have to.
So life, unfortunately, prevails, right? So,
I mean, you're strong because you're like, okay, well, we got to do what we got to do. Just go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we're again fortunate. We've both traveled a lot before. So the traveling part for me, thankfully, wasn't a big deal. I don't speak Czech, but I could navigate the system. I knew where to go and what to do. And I mean, the kink in the whole thing was Omicron hit basically halfway through our trip. So we had to get testing sites to get out of the country, new tests to get into the UK in order to fly home. So there was a whole bunch of extra stuff that we hadn't anticipated because of COVID flaring up while we were away. But he was able to get home 4 or 5 days earlier while the embryos were growing in the lab. And then I did the transfer by myself and flew out by myself the next day. So that was fine. But I did everything. I did the video that they offered there. They offer a video that you can pay for. So they show you the division of all the cells. So they can pick which one might work better. So we paid for that. I paid for the acupuncture that may or may not help, like everything. I'm like, we're going to do it all. Let's just work on this. Like, this is attempt number 4 now for this second pregnancy. Let's just do it. And he was more gentle, I'd say, than the clinicians I'd had at home. But he was like, we're going to transfer this one, but it doesn't look very good. The sperm were not very good. They're not the best embryos we've ever seen. It is a day 5, which is amazing. But you probably won't have any to freeze, and it, don't really get your hopes up, which is not a great way to go into your transfer.
Exactly.
Honest and very gentle, but I felt like, again, it was kind of a Hail Mary. You're here, you've paid the money, you've come so far, you don't not transfer it, but I pretty much knew it wasn't going to work. And it was sad.
But
sorry,
that did work.
No,
it didn't work. Oh, okay.
Oh. So I went for a walk down this beautiful park afterwards, and I just had tears pouring down my face. I'm like, I can't believe we just left our son for 10 days. And yet again, this is not going to work. And then, IVF positivity. It's going to work. It's going to work. It's going to work. Give me my French fries. Like, it's going to be okay. Yeah, no, it didn't work. I started bleeding like 3 days after I got home.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So what did work?
Well, then I had a new doctor and came back to the clinic in Calgary, and she's like, you obviously can't do frozen transfers. So there's a lot of belief now, especially I think in the IVF community, where they're like some doctors, and I know there's a new clinic in Calgary, and one of the docs, from what I've read online, not from firsthand, really only believes in frozen transfers. But I think there's people like me that literally cannot do a frozen transfer because they can't give you enough medications without stimulating egg production to do a frozen transfer.
Right.
So I am somebody, and I know there's other people, that you can't get a lining. You need like crazy meds, which only happen when they're doing a stimulation round, when they're doing a fresh transfer attempt. So I had a new doctor because my old one had retired. And she's like, you need the max of this, max. We're giving you the maximum dose, and we'll see how many we get. And I only ever really get 3 or 4 on a retrieval. And this would be my 3rd retrieval from that point. And like, let's see how it goes. In the meantime, my husband went on everything possible. So we did all the research. He was taking, I wish I could name them all, but 15 different medications plus the pack from the clinic. So everything that, like ashwagandha and all these different amazing medications and naturopathic supplements, as well as we did a huge deep dive into cooling products specifically for male infertility. So he bought these Max Cool underwear that have ice packs that you put in underneath. So desk workers, because men specifically, and now a lot of women, are sitting at the desk all the time. And especially for men, because we're all inside, but all of their reproductive is outside. And if you can't cool it down enough, you're basically deep frying your sperm all day long. So he would sit on these ice packs, and we, like, from the minute basically he left the Czech Republic, when he was like, I was too hot and those were bad sperm, he went on a cooling tangent. No more hot tubs, cold showers every day, no heated seats in the car, like only, like, he ate so healthy. I wish he was still eating that healthy. So like everything, and these cool underwear 100% of the time, everything possible because you need about 3 months to change over your sperm quality. So we went hardcore for 3 months, like no alcohol, like we didn't cut out gluten or any other crazy things, but no alcohol, which we're not big drinkers anyway, and all of these supplements and keeping cool as much as possible. And so we also then with him, because some men, my husband for sure, get nervous on the day of retrieval and their donation. So we did a pre-appointment for him to do sperm on his own and put that in the freezer in case that they weren't good quality on the day of.
Right.
That was a week separate without any pressure, when like things were chill, it was all good. So that we had that as a backup. So if things weren't good on the day of, then there would be a second option. So we spent more money, did that. And because we only ever had 3 or 4 eggs retrieved, I was never eligible for PGT testing, or I forget the acronym, but you have to have 6 or more, typically, at least in Alberta clinics, to be sent for testing. So we've never been able to qualify for testing. So it's always been kind of a crapshoot. Not that it's mattered apparently, but we've never had that ability to send for testing. So that's where I know friends that have had 13 and 14 retrieved that they could send for testing. It's amazing. Whereas we're doing ICSI and egg hatching and everything, but we just never have had the quantity retrieved to go for testing. So it was always like, well, what can we do without having all of the options available? Because just sometimes you don't have those options. So yeah, that one, it worked and I got pregnant, but they put in 2 and they were not very hopeful. But we don't do two embryo transfers very often. In Alberta, at least. You really have to push for it, because of course there's so many more things that happen if you are pregnant with twins or triplets. So they really try to reduce the multi births, but yeah, because we've gone through now 4 attempts and 2 retrievals for this second pregnancy alone, the 2 embryos didn't look very good. They were okay to put in 2. And I have the picture of myself with my mask on, holding my 2 embryos on the day of the transfer. I don't look very hopeful. I look pretty done. And I was done. It had been like 2 years. 2 years and 4 rounds trying to get pregnant with number 2, but one of them stuck.
So they have these Facebook groups to give you support through this, because conceiving is a lot. And I know I think I remember them giving you pamphlets about different support groups that are available for IVF clinics. Did you find that they were very helpful as you were going through this experience?
Yeah, I didn't find any of them through the clinic. I found them all just by starting to realize that there were these groups. Facebook's kind of altered from me telling you what I eat for breakfast, right? To like groups. And so I'd started realizing, okay, this is really taxing. I need to find some other supports. And so that's when I'd started to look at different resources available. And I found, Canada IVF, and I found US IVF, and I found these surrogacy groups and thin lining groups, and they were really supportive. Sometimes I was just a lurker in the background, and sometimes I asked questions, and I was really grateful the second time. I was much more vocal. I was very secretive my first time. But the second time, it was a lot. I ended up actually resigning from my job because I just couldn't manage work at the same time as having a 2.5-year-old, 3.5-year-old, how was he at the time, as well as trying to go through all this and manage the medications. I didn't want to have any more secrecy. I just needed to do it on my own terms. So I just was like, right before the last round, I was like, you know what? I need to not do work right now. I'm highly employable. I can do a million other jobs. I just need to focus on this. In retrospect, maybe I should have taken a leave of absence. It didn't honestly even cross my mind because I've never really quit a job without having another job before. But I knew that after 4 rounds, I just needed to look at this and do one thing and hang out with my son and enjoy that, because that might be all we had. So I ended up resigning from work so that I could just work on life.
Okay. And so they finally did this final round with the doctors here in Canada, and it stuck.
Yes.
Good. And so was it a healthy pregnancy, or did you have complications?
Yeah, no, the only thing that was unhealthy was my very high level of anxiety. Because I knew that I almost had a stillborn, I was very anxious. And the doctors weren't super receptive, but I was so grateful for the scans because I'm like ultrasounds, there we go. Because the ultrasound docs were wonderful. And they said, if you want to come in every week, if that'll make it better for you, like, let's book you in every week. Really? Because I was just so anxious. I was so anxious because and it's a girl, so if she didn't move for like a minute, I'd be stressed. It was just because I'd gone through that once. And I was so nervous about this one being stillborn or something happening. We did the NIPT. We didn't do that with our first. So we paid for everything out through the roof because it took me 4 rounds. And by this point, I'm much, much older and I have no frozen eggs, no frozen embryos, frozen sperm, but that's not much use without anything else. And the inability to have a lining really without crazy medications, which is why I'd been looking at surrogacy, because there might not have been the ability to carry. So it was like, this needs to work. And that level of like, this is our last effort. Like, we're not going to have another option because I'm that much older and he's that much older and our first child is that much older, that this is really our last go. So I was really, really, really grateful to the ultrasound techs and the ultrasound doctors, because for the last, I'd say 3 months, I went in every week. And yes, I was a burden on our healthcare system, and I'm okay with that, because 1 week before my scheduled C-section, they were like, it seems like you might be in labor. Let's put this on you and watch you for 45 minutes while you sit here. And they're like, no, I don't think you're in labor. The next evening, my water broke and I had another emergency C-section.
Well, thank God you've been through it beforehand, so you were aware.
For me, that wasn't an emergency. Yeah. Like, that was like, okay, your water broke and I had a scheduled C-section because I just didn't want the trauma. And they just don't want you to labor at all if you're planning to have a C-section. So for me, yes, technically it was on paper as an emergency, but it wasn't. It was, hey, my water broke. And the ultrasound docs thought I was kind of in labor earlier. Oh, sorry, I might need to pause.
He's adorable. He's like, come on. Oh my gosh, that's okay. That's okay.
Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, so on my side, it wasn't an emergency. It was, okay, this makes sense. Like, we're good. My husband was there. Of course, it was 2 a.m. and we had no one to look after my son because no one was picking up their phones, but it was fine. So that kind of at least reconciled the first one.
Right.
And it was, hey, okay, yeah, it's COVID. We're all wearing masks, whatever. But my husband's there. I feel pretty chill. I know what's going on. I noticeably didn't go into shock. I was only in the hospital for 2.5 days. I knew what the healing process was like, even with having an older child at home, being like, okay, I have to take care of you too. It's okay. So I was fortunate in an unfortunate way.
So, so in other words, and of course, if you've had a C-section in your previous pregnancy, they usually recommend that you do another C-section for the next one. But in general, the baby was healthy, no issues after the delivery. So you're able to have a successful delivery and a successful, raising of your child afterwards. So how we met was through your jewelry company called Remembryos. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Remembryo.
Remembryos. Thank you. Remembryos. And I thought that was a beautiful title for a company. And how did you decide to conceive this type of business? I
like your use of conceive. That's very so because of the embryos. So we had one, I just tidied up in here. I wish I still had it sitting here. So we had one embryo left that wasn't a very good quality. We probably would have never transferred it, to be honest, at the very end of all this. And it was like, well, am I paying $700 a year to keep this in the freezer for no reason? Like, everyone does that. I just read a bunch of posts being like, what are you doing with these? Ours, because of ICSI and assisted hatching, were not able to be donated. And I don't think in Canada we can donate embryos anyway, unless you're donating them for science or to somebody you know. It's not like in the US where you can adopt an embryo and things, from my understanding. I know there's rules and regulations and hoops and all the rest of it. But we couldn't do anything with ours other than being destroyed. And it was really stressful to know that I couldn't do anything with it. And you work so hard to create these M babies, and then they're just thrown away or donated or lost, like the transfers that I lost along the way that were still with embryos. And they're all babies for a moment, and they're your little pieces of DNA that you've worked so hard for. And it really was envisioned when a friend was saying that her friend had asked to get her embryos back from the clinic so she could do a little memorial for them, which sounds maybe a little morbid, but she knew they were done after one baby and she wanted her embryos back. It's hard to donate them. Then you'd have a sister or brother out there somewhere, and you don't necessarily want them for science, or you're not eligible, like we weren't. And so she wanted to, bury them with a tree and have them around. I'm like, well, yeah, all these people, that are undergoing IVF create these pieces of DNA. And yeah, okay, you could joke that every time you conceive naturally, there's billions of sperm that are not being used, or every time you have a period, you're losing an egg, and we don't mourn those things. But when you work so hard and you spend so much of your personal energy, time, and emotional energy, never mind money, but everything else that goes into that to create these, and then you're just like, nah, whatever. It's really hard. And it's surprising kind of the void that it creates. And so I just wanted a way to remember them, which is why it's Remembryo, because you're remembering the embryos.
Yes.
And so it's, I've had now some people that want to remember their loss, whether it be a transfer loss or a stillbirth or a miscarriage, or, remembering, I'm so sorry, the dog is going nuts. People that want to remember the trials and tribulations they've gone through. So I had another person I've reached out to on Instagram, small business, who went through 3 rounds and decided that, they decided to live child-free and be really happy with that decision. But she wanted something to remember those 3 rounds. And so there's still 3 attempts at a baby. There's still 3 amounts of drugs you've gone through, and the emotion that goes into that deserves to be remembered. It's a lot for someone to go through, whether it results in successful babies or it doesn't. And so that's kind of how it ended up coming to be, was the fact that it's like, okay, my one girlfriend has 8 frozen and they don't want any more, but she just can't let go of, they're in the freezer. And that's okay. You can leave them in the freezer, but she wanted her necklace to remember her 8 little babies that will never be, and carry them with her because they're still part of you, even after everything's been through. Right. So that's how it kind of came to be.
The image of the embryo that you were mentioning about, is that the one, one of the pictures that you had sent me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Good to know.
So it's, I'm creating a new line of jewelry as well, that actually you'll be able to put a picture of your embryo on a piece of jewelry. So what I previously had was just a star to remember the embryos that are in the heavens, or the babies that are in the heavens that you just can't have earthside, because no one these days typically has 13 children if you have 13 embryos, like my one girlfriend in the freezer. But also, it's now I've worked with another jeweler and we're working together, and we can actually put a picture of your embryo that was transferred, because you get a picture or a video. So you could do a snapshot of that embryo and you can actually put that onto a piece of jewelry, which is so cool.
That is beautiful, and a wonderful memento for people to have, because everyone has different ways of mourning, and to have that option to be able to hold on on a long-term basis, that's beautiful. That is beautiful.
It's variation on the thumbprint, fingerprint, right? But embryos don't have fingerprints yet, so it's as close as we can get.
That's true. That is true. And is there a website that people can find your jewelry?
Yeah. It's on Instagram as well, but it's Remembryo. So I'm not going to be able to spell it. REMEMBRYOS.com.
Perfect. I just want to thank you so much for just sharing your story. It's a remarkable story, and it's a story that many people can relate to.
And just even providing this option for people to mourn, whether it's a loss of embryos or a miscarriage, is a wonderful token. And honestly, it was an honor to have your jewelry showcased on the Freedom to Know Wellness blog. And for anyone who's interested, if you go to the Freedom to Know Wellness at substack.com blog and look for the PALE Network, it's an organization that helps people to manage when they've gone through a miscarriage. Allison was wonderful enough to be able to showcase some of her jewelry on the blog to be able to help women who are going through miscarriages. And so I thought they were beautiful. It was really beautiful to look at.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you again. Well, to our listeners, as I always like to say to close, reading information is one thing, but listening to a lived experience is another and paramount. And that's what we do here at Freedom to Know Wellness. Thank you again for listening, and be well.
Since this recording, Allison has continued to craft an array of beautiful artistic pendants as emblems for individuals to remember their lost embryos, miscarriages, and infants.
Thank you for listening to this episode. To have your voice heard on Freedom to Know Wellness, email us at info@freedomtoknowwellness.ca. For content like this and more, subscribe to the Freedom to Know Wellness blog at freedomtoknowwellness@substack.com. And for more podcasts, follow our FTK Wellness YouTube channel and find Freedom to Know Wellness on all major podcast platforms. And don't forget us on social media at FTK Wellness.